Welcome back to this week's episode of the State of Recruiting, your weekly Horns 24/7 recruiting podcast. I'm Mike Roach, and I'm joined as always by Nick Harris. We've got a big show for you today. We're going to talk a little bit about where this Texas class looks like coming out of the bye week, what Nick's trip to Louisiana kind of brought for us, and then a big basketball commitment. It's basketball recruiting season, I guess, and as you guys know, that's not really my forte, but we'll clear out the lane and give Nick the ball so he can tell you all about the newest Texas Longhorn for Chris Beard. Before we get into all that, Nick, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. I liked that little pun. Is that what you call it? That was nice.
Yeah, I thought thought it was apropos. So we sit here. It is October 27th, and Texas is coming out of the bye week. I haven't checked this. I'm just going to say the number 4 class. I know things change with other schools getting commits and stuff. Last check, it was the number 4 class in the country. And so, they've got 22 commits. I think they're kind of like, we're in the last stages of this recruiting class. And so where do you see I'm sorry, it's number 6. I just checked it. Where do you see right now the biggest needs in this class going forward?
I think it still, presents offensive line and defensive back challenges. Obviously, Texas is doing a pretty good job recruiting on the offensive line, but the only commits that we see so far are Cole Hudson and Connor Robertson. Probably moving forward, more of those tackle bodies, such as Malik Agbo, Ernest Green, or whoever else they decide to pursue down the stretch. Those are going to be important guys so that they can get big bodies on the outside. And then looking at defensive back, it's been kind of up and down the entire class. Early in whenever Sarkisian was hired, we had kind of thought the safety position might end up being, a loaded group. And now in hopes of landing Jacoby Matthews, that's still, a possibility. But if not, then, Texas is going to have to look towards some contingencies down the stretch. But, most of their top targets are left in those top two position groups, and those are going to be really important moving forward.
Yeah, those two for sure. And then wide receiver position, finding playmakers in that group that can, right now I see the biggest weakness on this team is guys who just can't go attack the ball and make something out of nothing, really. And finding guys in this class that can do that, obviously the priority is speed. You see that with Brennan Thompson, the pursuit of Evan Stewart. We've heard that Texas is pursuing Aaron Anderson from Edna Carr, who you saw last no, you didn't see Edna Carr last week. I'm sorry. I saw Edna Carr a couple weeks ago, but he can absolutely fly. So there is a lot still going on there at the wide receiver position as well. Nick, I mean, if you had to identify 3 or 4 of the most important guys on the board, who would that be?
Oh, goodness. Devon Campbell, Evan Stewart, I would say Jacoby Matthews even, and Denver Harris, 4 or 5 stars right there. Those are important guys that, they could very well get in the class. And if they could somehow pull off all 4, I think that would be pretty massive.
Yeah, I mean, if they pulled off those 4 for sure, the big leading guys, I think you have to have a tackle body. So I think I would probably throw an Ernest Green into that group. But, those are the guys. And that's the funny thing about this class is, yeah, there were maybe times during the summer where you thought, well, they're taking, these lower rated guys or whatever. And, sometimes a recruiting class, it starts with a mix of high and low rated guys and, it finishes with a mix. This class will finish, if it's going to finish strong, it's going to finish with all top 100, top 200 guys. I mean, this is a class that if everything goes the way Texas wants it to on the recruiting trail, they could make a run at the top 2 or 3 just because they are going to add so many highly rated guys. So I think, that's something to watch down the stretch. We will, of course, have you updated over at 247. Nick, you saw a couple of those highly rated guys on your trip to Louisiana this week. And usually we kind of talk about who we saw, but you had such a big weekend. I want to give you lots of room here to talk about Louisiana recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and Guy Frazier, who's a frequent guest on the show, we made the trip down to Louisiana over the weekend. We started on Thursday in Ponchatoula, down it was about north of Lake Pontchartrain in Mandeville, to go see five-star safety Jacoby Matthews. He was taking on Fontainebleau. And, he looked really good. It wasn't the best competition, that he'll probably see all year. But he looked really good in coverage. And, even on third down, they were moving him up and, letting him play press man and moving into nickel. So he definitely showed some versatility throughout the evening. And I think that's part of, what makes his game so special, potentially at the next level. And I talked to him after the game. Coming out of his Texas official visit, I think Texas, probably has, quite a bit of buzz there right now. The key thing will just be to keep that post-visit high going. There's a lot of schools that are, going after Matthews. He's still got quite a bit of visits left. He just decommitted from LSU. LSU is still on the table, as well as wherever Ed Orgeron ends up, that school will be on the table. Ed Orgeron's one of the coaches he's built the strongest relationships with. He's the first coach that ever offered him. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out down the stretch of his recruitment. But you got Georgia, Florida, and Texas A&M. Those are three other schools that are very heavily vying for his services. A&M has been a school we've heard a lot of buzz about too. He's got a strong relationship with Bryce Anderson and Bobby Taylor, the two A&M commits. And he was supposed to be in College Station this past weekend, did not make it in, but I fully do expect him to make it in at some point. And then he's got official visits to Florida and Georgia lined up as well. So, all that being said, Texas is right in the thick of all of this, but they're going to have to stay the course and, kind of ride the ups and downs. And, when January 2nd rolls around at the Under Armour All-American game, I think Texas has a pretty good shot of landing his commitment. But again, they're just going to have to stay the course and, continue to build on that relationship that he's built with Terry Joseph. I think that's going to be really important moving forward. And then on Friday, we made the trip down to White Castle, Louisiana. And I kind of want to preface what we saw in White Castle with kind of like what White Castle is. So me and Guy were driving into the town, and we just smelled this stench. Like, what is this smell throughout the entire town? And we get to the game, and no one's really like noticing it. We feel like it feels like it's normal to everybody, and it's throughout the entire town. We do see like this industry mill like off in the distance across the street from the stadium. So Guy, he asks an official, he's like, what is this smell? Like, is everyone used to this? He's like, it's a sugar mill, and it's the sugar harvesting season right now, I guess. Hence why their name is White Castle. And he's like, that's the smell of them breaking down the raw sugar canes, and then, creating it into the sugar that we eat and drink. And it smells absolutely foul. So I found that quite interesting. I'm kind of a sucker for those kind of things. But by about the second quarter, that smell finally wore off. It was quite interesting. But we were there to see Jamon Tapp, the 4-star edge commit for Texas here in the 2022 class. And my goodness, he's probably my favorite commit I've seen so far this season. He looked really good, really strong, really physical. He's in the backfield every single play. He even does some stuff on offense for Ascension Catholic. He won't at the next level, but it just kind of shows his athleticism and versatility in different ways. He had 2 blocked punts. One of them he picked up in return for a touchdown. He was doing it in all 3 phases of the game. Talked to him after the game. And, I think Texas still has a little bit of work here left to do to, make sure he signs that paper in December. He will be early signing, but he will not be early enrolling. He'll be enrolling next summer. But before that early signature is on the paper, there's going to be probably trips to Alabama. LSU is still on the table. Florida is still on the table. So Texas is definitely going to have to, keep communication strong, get him back on campus even. And whenever those visits do happen to other schools, make sure that Texas is doing as much as they can to counteract it. So the race for Jamon Tapp is certainly not over, but I think working in Texas's favor is he says he has no stronger relationship than the one he has with Steve Sarkisian. Sarkisian has been really, key in this recruitment, as well as Pete Kwiatkowski and Bo Davis. These are all guys that have really built a strong relationship with him in the past few months. And those are even the guys on staff that don't really have the Louisiana ties. So I found that pretty interesting, just to kind of see, the entire staff is willing to go out into the boot and, do things on the recruiting side of things. And then on Saturday, we went down to New Orleans to see 2022 commit Champ Lewis, the corner, for Warren Easton. It was their homecoming. He won homecoming king. It was a big night for him, and they blew out Eleanor McMain. All three teams won this weekend in blowout fashion, so we didn't really get to see any crazy games. But going back to Champ Lewis, he looked pretty strong in coverage, really good length. He was taller than I thought he was. He's got really long arms, really long legs, and he's still got quite a bit of room to grow into his frame. And he's got a really big underdog mentality that I think will definitely help him at the next level. He's going to be going into Austin, very low on the depth chart, and he knows that. And I talked to him after the game, and he's like, I'm ready to start from the bottom and prove myself again. So, sometimes that's half the battle, that mindset. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do at the next level.
All right. So that's a great recap. You saw Wallace Foster as well. What did you think of Wallace Foster?
That's right. 2024 athlete for Warren Easton. Man, he is something else. He's going to be playing corner at the next level, most likely. And man, he looks super strong. I talked to him after the game as well. Texas, LSU, Florida. Those are the schools that are in on him the most. I think Texas can definitely have a shot right there. They're going to get a visit out of him most likely in the spring, especially with Champ early enrolling. And, those two guys are really close. So, Wallace Foster, probably one of the better 2024 recruits I've seen all year.
I told you probably the best in-person eval I saw this year out of any of the guys I saw. So, really impressed with him and his ability. All right, Nick, that's a great recap from Louisiana. We'll talk a little bit more about the games I saw later on. Before we move on to our game picks, Texas got some basketball news this week. We kind of talked about this last week. I did see this official visitor during the Oklahoma State game. Dylan Mitchell, a 5-star from Montverde Academy in Florida, made his commitment. I can vouch, having seen him up close, massive human. Like I told the story last week, it's always funny to see a basketball recruit in the sea of football recruits, because as big as those guys are, they all look small compared to him. Nick, what is Dylan Mitchell? How did this recruitment play out, and what does Dylan Mitchell kind of bring to the table for Chris Beard?
Yeah, absolutely. We could start in late June. That's when Texas really started to apply the pressure in this recruitment. At that time, Florida State, Tennessee, and Ohio State, those were the three schools that had really been, pushing for him hard quite a bit. Florida State got an unofficial visit towards the end of June. It was only unofficial because it was in state, and, it was easy to get to Tallahassee from where he was at in Montverde. And then he took an official visit to Tennessee in early July. And coming out of each of those visits, there was quite a bit of momentum for each of those schools. And then that's when Texas really started to apply the pressure. And they made multiple trips out to Montverde to meet with him and his mother, whether it be Chris Beard or, some of the assistants. And they were able to secure an official visit out of him, sneak into his top 3. And they got the last visit, and it ended up being, enough to go ahead and land his commitment. But they got that last visit a couple weeks ago, like you said, during the Oklahoma State game. And, he really liked what he saw all around at the program. He's really bought into Chris Beard's, philosophy, and he likes how hard that the team works. He was able to sit in on a practice, and, that was something that really stood out for him in the end. And then when it came to commitment time, Texas was the choice. They were able to, overcome the in-state Florida State ties, and as well as Tennessee, who had been doing a really good job. Rick Barnes and company had done a really good job with recruiting him. But this is a very interesting commitment, because Texas came in figuratively late into his recruitment, and they were still able to close the door and basically get who they wanted. That's something that I think kind of speaks to how strong these recruiting tactics are on the staff. I mean, you could ask anybody in the country, which staff probably has the strongest recruiters on staff, and Texas is going to be mentioned in that top 5. Kentucky obviously has some really strong recruiters. Tennessee as well. This was a big battle between Tennessee and Texas that Texas was able to win. But, Texas is going to be in that top notch, for a while, as long as some of these assistants are on staff. But kind of what he will bring to Texas. He's kind of a wing forward. He's going to play the 2, 3, even the 4 at times, given his size. And he's a guy that can guard 1 through 5. He's really quick, really twitchy in some ways, really bouncy. I think he's going to have some of those electric dunks that Texas fans liked out of Greg Brown. But I think he's going to have a little bit more to his game than Greg Brown, being that he's can play multiple positions, can guard multiple positions. And our 24/7 Sports national scouting director Jerry Meyer, he compared him to the Hornets' Kelly Oubre. I'm a big fan of that comparison. I think it's pretty accurate. So I think that's definitely something he could bring to the next level. And I don't think he's a one-year guy. I think he's going to be, 2, 3, 4 years, especially given his first year. There's going to be, quite a bit of depth at that small forward position, most likely. Jalen Tyson's going to be a sophomore by that point if he doesn't go off this year. And, that's probably somebody who's in line for a starting role. So, Dylan Mitchell is definitely, open to, waiting around and, getting his education. And, I'm pretty excited about Dylan Mitchell. And that's the second 5-star that Texas will get in this 2022 class. And he'll join Arterio Morris. And it's the first time Texas has had 2 5-stars in the same class since 2016 when they had Jarrett Allen and from your Irving MacArthur Cardinals, Andrew Jones.
Usually I would have a comment there that would be laced with profanity and about MacArthur, but I do like Andrew Jones, and it's hard not to root for that kid and all he's been through. Have you seen this kid? I know you go to a ton of AAU. Has he come through in any of the tournaments you've been at?
No, he hasn't. I'm working to get out to Montverde, before he graduates so I can see him. They also have a Texas women's basketball commit at Montverde, Jordania Codio. So I'd like to knock out both. We'll see.
So the all-important question, Nick, what do I ask about every basketball recruit?
Can he shoot?
Can they shoot?
Yes.
Can he shoot?
He can shoot the mid-range pretty well. You're not going to see him stretch the floor and shoot the 3 too often at the next level. I'm very curious to see how much his game develops now that he's at Montverde. This will be his one and only year at Montverde. And for those that don't know, it's probably the elite prep program in the country at this point. I mean, they've produced some big-time guys in the past. Just recently, Cade Cunningham. So, and this team this year is loaded with talent. Vitsu Uchukwu, the USC commit. Jalen Hood-Schifino, a 5-star compo guard. And there's a ton of others on the team that I'm just kind of blanking on right now. But, I'm curious to see how his development and how his game grows in his 1 year at Montverde and kind of see what new things he brings to the table. But as I see it right now, I think he's just going to be a big force inside and a really, big defensive force as well.
All right. Well, thanks, Nick, for that basketball update. Is there anything else going on in the basketball class? I mean, do you have a feel for how many spots there might be in this group and other guys to kind of look out for down the stretch here?
Yeah, I think the Texas staff is just going to kind of hold right now. Cason Wallace is still uncommitted. Everybody in the world still expects him to end up at Kentucky here in November. But the Texas staff is still doing their due diligence on that part. But aside from Cason Wallace, I think they're just kind of holding and waiting to see how many spots that they're going to have available here in this 2022 class, and then how many spots they want to use on the transfer portal. The way I see it right now, I would probably only expect about 1 or 2, if any, more spots to be used in this 22 class. But that's something we won't really know until about January or February, once we really start to get a good sense of who's going to be heading to the draft, who's going to be out on the outs. But as it sits right now, most of the offers on the table are already committed. I guess the one kid I am just personally keeping an eye on is the 3-star power forward out of Mississippi, Sam Murray. I don't think that's someone Texas is going after too hard right now, but I think later down the line, if they decide they want to open up a spot for a program type guy, I think Sam Murray would be a good fit. But that's about where it sits right now.
All right. If you're listening on the podcast right now, we are going to go to break and you're going to hear from some of our sponsors. If you're watching on the YouTube, we're going to take a very small break and we're going to bring in our friend Guy Frazier to do game picks with us. And there he is. We didn't think we were getting him today. We got a text about 10 minutes ago. It's like, I got a work thing. Got to take care of this. So I was preparing to do my best Guy Frazier impression through this all. And then 5 minutes later, get a text back that's like, no, wait, I'm good. I can do this. So Guy, thanks for joining us. Thanks for moving the schedule around and getting in with us.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a morning, fellas. I got a headache. I got work stuff popping up. I got my boss calling me while I'm on the phone with Nick, and here we are now. Somehow it's been a whirlwind, but good to be here.
Well, we'll try to knock this out quickly so you can get back to your regular job. Um, uh, Guy, Nick already kind of talked about Louisiana. Do you have anything you want to throw in on Louisiana?
Well, I don't know what he touched on, but it was a great time. Well worth the time. We made some good inroads there in New Orleans Saturday night with the Warren Easton staff, and then had just two really good nights of fun and good football on Thursday and Friday. None of the games were really all that competitive, but I got to see some good players and find some new faces as well. So all in all, it was a great time, and I think I had my best driving effort ever. Saturday night, we made it back from New Orleans in I think 6 hours and 20 minutes. We were booking it. So
I called
uh,
you guys. I called you guys at 4 a.m.
yeah.
I was getting home from hanging out at my brother's house, and my wife is like, "Who are you calling at 4 a.m.?" And I was like, "Guy and Nick are on the road. Well, I'm just gonna check on them, just see if they're okay." And you guys were like, I think an hour.
We were outside of Terrell at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah, you were. Yeah, not far at all. So I was blown away by
Well, we
your
stopped
time.
for gas twice. That's the other thing to keep in mind. So we were picking up ground pretty fast.
Y'all
So
were booking it. Y'all were booking it.
we
All
were.
right, Nick, do you have you done the math? Do you know where we stand with everything?
Yes, I do. I have the math. Hold on, let me pull it up 1 second. All right, we all had kind of a up and down week last week. There was some upsets, around the state, especially in our games. But Mike still leads at 33-9. I am at 33-11, and the guys at 21-8. And we talked this past week for the viewers in the audience. It sounds like we're going to reset things once the playoffs come around. So we only have 2 weeks left to claim the regular season championship. So it's do or die time at this point.
What was the upsets last week? I'm blanking on like what were the big
Cypress
ones.
Ranch was one of them with Langham Creek and
Yeah, that
Petaluma.
was the one I immediately remember.
The Manor Pflugerville Wise game, which we did figure out was Wise. Mike and I were right. I don't know if that was really an upset, but that was kind of a pick'em game, and I think most of us went with Manor, except
Yeah.
maybe Nick, and
Yeah.
Wise ended up winning the game, so that kind of tripped us up a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, Guy, what do you got on the slate for us this week?
Yeah, so there's actually some really good games this week. Sometimes that's hard to find this late in the season, and some really important games. We've got a couple late season district championships, which that doesn't always settle out that way. And then Houston has some good games this week as well, so made sure to go down there and pick a good one from that region as well. But the first game here is in Young Knicks territory, 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Rockwall's Wilkerson Sanders Memorial Stadium, aka the Wilk. The Tyler Legacy Raiders, who are 5-3, travel west to face off with the number 6 team in 6A. The Rockwall Heath Hawks, who are 7-1. Heath enters this game as a 4-touchdown favorite, roughly. I think they're a 26-point favorite to be exact, according to DCTF Computer. Wanted to tee this one up to Nick, just because I think the 10-6A race is pretty much locked up for playoff seeding. But could Legacy maybe move up a little bit with a win here? Is that possible, or am I off on that?
Yeah, they definitely could. They would probably move into that 1 seed for 6A D2, and that would move Rockwall Heath down to the 2nd seed there in 6A D2.
Okay. All right. Well, Mike, I'll let you go first. We'll do our typical order.
As much as I would love to pick against Heath here, and let me tell you, boys, before we get started, like Matt Stepp and I drove to Austin last Thursday. We were just talking about D2 and all that it has, and I can't handle Nick being that happy. So like I'm going to be rooting against Heath and Rockwall in the playoffs because I don't think we're going to be able to handle Nick on this podcast if either one of those teams makes a deep run. That said, much as I like Tyler Legacy, much as I like Joe Willis, the dual rushing attack of Jamarian Miller and Bryson Donnell. I think that they've shown kind of who they are this year, and that's a good team, not a great team. And when they've gone up against elite competition, they've kind of shown that they just don't they can't hang. And I think a lot of that is problems with the quarterback position, and guys loading up to stop those running backs, and then nobody can beat them with the arm. So. It feels like Rockwall and Heath have both flirted with disaster a couple of times this year. Upsets they should have been in, but I got Heath winning this one pretty big.
This is actually kind of a funny game. It's the one high school game a year that my mom pays attention to because she graduated from Tyler Legacy back when it was Tyler Lee back in 1991. So when her alma mater is playing my alma mater, it's the one game she checks in for. And she hasn't won yet, and she's not going to win this year. So go Hawks.
Mike's gonna be throwing up that H on Twitter about 10:30.
No, it'll be about 8:45.
Yeah, he'll pretty much early do it. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with everything y'all had to say. Mike had a good point in that every time Legacy has played someone a little bit more above their weight class, it typically doesn't go well, and that's kind of been the story of them the last couple of years. They're a good program right now, but they're not great. And so because of that, I think that's going to show on Friday again. And I don't know if they'll lose by 4 touchdowns, but it might get like that. I mean, Heath's offense is capable of exploding on you. So, yeah, I'm going to roll with Rockwall Heath here, and I guess I'll be throwing up an H2 on Friday night. Moving on to game number 2. I think it's the game that actually Mike is going to be at. 7 p.m. Friday night at Marcus Marauder Stadium in Flower Mound. We have the number 19 Louisville Fighting Farmers, who are 8-0, traveling across town to face off with their rival, the Flower Mound Marcus Marauders, who are 6-2. Farmers enter this game as a 1-point fave. I believe this game is called the Battle of the Axe, so it'd be a great atmosphere where home field advantage might play into it a little bit. Mike, I'll let you go over this game first.
The second Battle of the Axe I'll be going to in as many years. As you know, Sherman and Dennison also play for the Axe. This one's been tough for me. I've expected Marcus to be better than they have been this year. I think they've dropped a couple games that maybe nobody expected, and they've got a lot of talent on that team. But Louisville has been, they've been a bowling ball of butcher knives this year. They've just been rolling through people. Explosive offense. Obviously, they've got, Armani Winfield and their young quarterback, Ethan Terrell's been throwing the ball well. Jaden Hardy on the defensive side. They've got some big guys up front. I think in normal cases, I would probably side with the home team here, but I'm going to go with the Farmers on the road to get a big win and stay undefeated.
Yeah, this is a rivalry game, and anything can happen in rivalry games. I saw Marcus earlier this year against Flower Mound, in which case Flower Mound won that matchup for the first time since I believe 2009. And then Flower Mound stormed the opposing field. It was something I'd never seen before. But Louisville, they've been one of the top teams in 6A this year. Really high-flying offense. Armani Winfield, the Texas commit, leading them on the receiving end of things. And they have a 2024 quarterback, correct? That's been lighting up.
Ethan Terrell. Yep.
Ethan Terrell, that's right. That's been lighting it up as well. I'm going to take the Farmers. I think they handle Marcus quite easily on Friday night. And I don't think they storm Marauder Stadium.
So I guess this is
it's an interesting. That would be an interesting side bet. Do they storm?
So I'm going to separate myself a little bit here and actually go with the home team because I've been a part of a couple of these games in the Flower Mountain ISD, Louisville ISD world, or I guess it's Louisville ISD. And it seems like home field does play into it sometimes. So I'm actually going to roll with Marcus, and I'm going to highlight 2 guys that I like in that game that are maybe a little bit more under the radar than the Ashton Cozarts of the world and whatnot, and Dallas Dudley and Isaac Katab, 2 playmakers in their offense that are pretty smooth route runners, in my opinion. Not saying they're going to be the sole difference makers, but I do like those 2 guys, so I wanted to highlight them. So I'm going to roll with the Marauders here, actually. I haven't been a believer in the Louisville Farmers since Tony Cade was there in 2002. So I'm going to keep rolling with that. and separate myself from you boys on this one. So
I'm gonna have to
moving
send this
on.
clip. I'm gonna have to send this clip to Coach Odell over there at Louisville.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fine.
You know what's funny? What's funny is, so you guys know I'm building a house, and yesterday I went to a pre-construction meeting with my home builder to sit down and talk about some stuff. And I was wearing my, you've seen my Louisville hoodie. I was wearing that, and he goes, "Is that a Louisville hoodie?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I can't build this house for you." And turns out he's a Marcus guy, lives right behind the school, and we got into talking about the game. So. Should be a fun one. I'm excited. I've never seen this rivalry, so I always like adding these historic rivalries to the slate. All right, guy. What do you have next?
Yeah, they're always great atmosphere. Sometimes high school rivalries can be a little lackluster, but Louisville ISD always brings a powerful punch. So, moving on to game number 3, going back out to Knicks territory again, actually. At 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Royce City ISD Stadium, right there off of I-30, correct? Is that right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. The number 4 Ennis Lions, who are 8-0, travel to face off with the Royce City Bulldogs, who are 8-0 as well. While they're both undefeated, Ennis does enter this game as a 15-point favorite, according to DCTF Computer. Big game in 8-5A D2, district championship game, pretty much. So late season game that matters, and that's always fun. Mike, I'll let you take over.
I want to start by saying that Royce City ISD Stadium is one of, nobody ever talks about it, but it's a great stadium. I love watching games. It's a great press box. They feed you well. Even the food in the concession stands is pretty great. So shout out to Royce City ISD Stadium. Shout out to Royce City, the city in Texas I consistently spell wrong every time. And all that's where the shout outs are going to end. I looking at what they've done, it's impressive. They've been able to get to 8-0, but man, they've done it by some thin margins some weeks. And Ennis is, while Ennis doesn't have the hype they had going into the playoffs last year, they are still a really strong team. I think I got to go with Ennis here. 15-point favorite. I'd probably even take them by more. I think their defense is going to shine in this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ennis is a little bit too much for Royce City in this one. Royce City is, like you said, squeaked by some teams in that district, and Ennis has just been plowing through it. And last week, Royce City was in a banger 65-63 game against Crandall. So, I'm wondering how much of a layover effect that they'll have in there as well. I think the one thing playing in their favor, though, is that it is on their home turf. They typically bring a pretty good crowd out to Royce City. They have a pretty good fan base. So, I think it could be close, but I'm going to take Ennis. I think Sam Harrell's squad pulls it out.
Yeah, so both teams are 8-0, but they've kind of gotten there in different ways, as both of y'all kind of alluded to. Ennis, while they fell in the area around the Timberview last year after being number 1 in the state for the entire year for 5AD2, a little bit of a letdown, but they've come back strong this year. I think everybody kind of expected that. I'm not sure everybody expected Royce City to be in this same spot. They were really good last year, but they had quite a bit of a strong core graduate with Keytron Jackson going off to Arkansas, and then Michael Alpin going to Missouri State. And they had several other good guys that were just good high school players. So with all that said, I'm going to roll with Coach Harrell and Ennis. I think we expected them to be in this spot again as they were last year. And while this is a cool story for Royce City, I think there is a little bit of separation here. So I'm going to roll with Ennis and the Lions as well. Moving on to our game that is worth 2 times the points. So it's a big one down in Houston this week. Is 7 p.m. Friday night at GPISD Stadium in Galena Park. The number 5 Humboldt-Atascocita Eagles, who are 7-1, travel to face off with the number 8 Galena Park North Shore Mustangs, who are 8-1. We've touched on this district, it seems like, every week on this podcast for the last month. I almost didn't put this game in here just because we've done that, but we've come this far, and this is the most important one out of their entire district slate, so we'll roll with it. Mike, I'll let you take over.
So I've seen both these teams this year. Finally, an advantage to Mike in the picks. I would really love to see this game with Gavin Session playing quarterback at Atascocita. And I know I've ridden the Eagles a lot this year in our picks and have been rewarded for it. I went in. What was it? 2 weeks ago, I saw North Shore against Summer Creek, and went into it not really knowing what North Shore had, knowing they lost a lot offensively. They do it in a, I will say, and this is not in an insulting way, but it's a boring offense that they run, and yet they still manage to rack up points. They play tough defense. They do that John Kay thing. With Gavin Session, I would think this would be more of a pick'em type of game, but a young quarterback at Atascocita who's got a little bit of experience, but going up against that defense, I wouldn't want to be in that spot. I'm going to go with North Shore, and I'll double down.
Yeah, this one I've been going back and forth on. I think both of these teams definitely have a lot to bring to the table. I think Atascocita is still as strong with 2024 quarterback Zion Brown at the helm. That's someone that I'm really starting to like as he starts to get more varsity reps under his belt, filling in for Gavin Sessions. And obviously they have a strong offensive line. They have some key playmakers on the defensive side. But North Shore, I just don't know what it is, but they find a way to win. John Kay, defensive-minded coach, has brought that defense to play ever since they lost to Westfield, and then the very next week, gave up 34 points to a mediocre Klein Oak team. Since then, they have just been rolling through competition, haven't really been tested. And then last week against a really good CE King team, they beat them 17-0. So, I think North Shore's another one of those teams that just gets better as the season goes on. I think they're going to be a playoff force once again in 6A D1. And I think it starts with a district championship and a win over Atascocita. And I'm going to go ahead and double down.
Yeah, so I've seen neither of these teams still, as I've mentioned, every week it seems like. But I think that'll change come playoff time. With that said, I've tried to kind of listen in on what y'all have said after y'all have seen them. And then I listened to the DCTF podcast, Tep and Step, this week. And one thing they commented on was this is a game where Zion Brown cannot be a bus driver, and they've kind of been just nursing him along and slowly feeding him to the fire. But North Shore is not going to allow that to be a thing this week. And so if Gavin Sessions was in the game, a little bit more of a dynamic player quarterback at this point, I may roll with the Atascocita. They probably had the most impressive win on the season this year between the two teams when they beat Allen. But I think I'm going to roll with North Shore. They've been the king of 21-6A in kind of that East Houston area. So I'm going to double down and roll with them. It's at home, too. I'm not sure how much that matters in this game, but I'm going to roll with the Mustangs. Which moves us on to our final game, and it's our small school game of the week. It's a fun one. It's out in East Texas once again, actually. 7:30 p.m. Friday night at Jimmy E. Cox Stadium in Wascom, Texas. The Elysian Field Yellow Jackets, who are 7-1, travel to face off with the number 8 Wascom Wildcats, who are 7-1. I don't have much on this game other than this is two historically, pretty solid East Texas programs. And that young Nick and I went through Wascom twice this past week and commented how the school was right off the highway. So that's about all I got. Mike, you take over.
I'll tell you what I got. I don't know anything about Elysian Fields, but I did see Wascom at State 7-on-7, and I fell in love with Wascom at State 7-on-7, specifically their quarterback, Cole Watson, who's another 2024 guy to watch. It is a legitimate – this is not a small school will play small – like this is a guy that could play bigger time ball at the next level. I love that in 7-on-7 they still run the wing. They still have wing backs and 3-point stance. Watson was slinging the ball over at 7-on-7. I'm going to go with what I know because I don't know Elysian Fields. I'm going to roll with Wascom here just because I do love Cole Watson. So go Wascom.
Wascom is like 5 minutes from the border, the Texas-Louisiana border. Found that kind of shocking too. I didn't realize how deep east it was. And we almost went and saw Wascom last year, me and Guy, a game against ARP, but I forget what fell through. I think it was like a Monday night game or something like that, or Thursday night.
I mean, it was, during the COVID season when you had games on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and for some reason Nick and I ended up making to it, but that seemed like a pretty sexy East Texas small school game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Wascom here. I think they've, had the more commanding stretch of district games than Elysian Fields has had, and plus it's going to be at their home stadium. Give me Wascom.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this. I'm not sure it really matters, but Wascom is a 24-point favorite according to the DCTF computer, so I think they are the stronger team here. I mean, shoot, Elysian Fields historically has a lot of speed, and I think Wascom has typically too. The only thing I really know about Elysian Fields as well is I think that's where Chad Morris maybe got his first coaching job. So that's my historical context on the Yellow Jackets. As far as this year's team, I really have no idea. So I'm going to roll with Wascom. I think they're the stronger 7-1 at this point, and I'll take them to take their district. So that wraps it up.
All right, that'll do it for picks. We already talked about Louisiana for you guys, so I'll just briefly talk about where I went last week. On Thursday, Matt Stepp and I went down to see Del Valle and San Marcos in a game that was like really. It was actually for a game that ended a double-digit win for San Marcos. Was a really interesting one. I didn't know what to expect, and we got there. And I had seen Del Valle once this year, and they just got pasted by Westlake, which everybody tends to get pasted by Westlake. So I didn't hold it too much against them. And we talked to John Walsh, the head coach at San Marcos, who said, my star running back is out for the first half because he got 2 personal fouls last week. He goes, if I can just keep it close and we get him back in the second half, we'll be okay. And that is exactly what happened. They got out to Del Valle got out to a 28-7 lead in this game. And then San Marcos scored right before the half to make it like 28-14. And then they got the running back, and he went for like 250 in the second half. And San Marcos came storming back to win the game. I think it was 43-35. Del Valle receiver Braylon James looked really good. That's a really impressive built kid. He plays really well, plays real physically for he's long, but he's not real powerfully built, but still plays very physically at the point of attack and can go up and get the ball and all those sorts of things. For San Marcos, we did find a giant, 2024 offensive lineman, Ori Williams, who didn't play because he's a transfer sitting out for transfer rules. But you can't miss him on the sideline at like 6'8", 325 pounds. And the funny thing was, they told us in his JV game, he had thrown a touchdown the night before. They had thrown a double pass to him, and said he had gone down and got it, picked it up, and then threw it 40 yards in the air. So really interesting kid. Guy, do you have something you want to ask there?
I was wondering if you saw the second part of all of that on Twitter following. I know you had said he came from, I think it was Buda Hayes, right?
Yeah, he had
originally from El
from there.
Campo.
Yeah, he was an original Rice Bird.
Which I found fascinating.
Yeah, so who knows? He could still be there blocking for Ruben Owens. So
right.
Yeah, what a wild story. And then Friday night, I went out to see. We'd heard the hype, and I thought it was probably going to be a good game, and it turned out being kind of a beating. But Lovejoy versus Frisco. I had heard the hype on Lovejoy, and part of it was I'd gone out to Lovejoy in the spring and thought, wow, this team's got a chance to obviously repeat on what they've done. First of all, let's talk about the fact that Lovejoy has gone from a guy named Ralphie Rucker at quarterback to a guy named Hondo Franklin. I mean, it doesn't get more elite than that when you're talking quarterback names. To me, Lovejoy is all due respect to the Kings and Alito, who do it every year, and they show up every year, and every year somebody picks somebody to knock them off, and they don't. I think Lovejoy, this is the year, I've got to think, because this is probably the most, I won't say down, but I think Alito lacks that like key playmaker and like Jace McClellan or JoJo Earl that they've always had. And I think, man, Lovejoy is just a really well-built team. Offensively, defensively, they get it done in all 3 phases. So they were really impressive, kind of never really struggled. Their parking situation's a nightmare at Lovejoy High School. We got to fix that. But I've seen all I need to see of the Leopards going into the playoffs. I think that they're dangerous. And really, if you look at that, what's that? They're 5A D2, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at 5A D2 Region 2, I think I'll make the argument that's the most interesting region in the state this year. I mean, it is. I mean, you're talking Lovejoy, Aledo,
So
South Oak Cliffs in that mix. Ennis is in that mix.
Frisco,
Burleson
Burleson.
Burleson could be plucky in that mix, I think, with Dylan Rayola. Frisco's in that mix. So that's a really, I think I'm looking at 5AD2 to be the bloodbath region this year. Just, whoever comes out of there is going to be extremely battle tested. All right, fellas, where are y'all headed this week?
Nick, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go. On Thursday night, I'm going to be heading down to Nick Harris County to see Aldine Eisenhower and Spring Decaney. Aldine Eisenhower is home to 2023 wide receiver Ryan Niblett that Texas was the first to offer on about a month ago. Since then, about 5 other schools have come into the mix. So finally going to see, lay some eyes on him. And also, I got some good friends on the Decaney staff. So going out and seeing those guys in 2023 wide receiver for them, Jonah Wilson. He has not been offered by Texas, but he's got some pretty impressive offers on his sheet. He's got A&M, LSU. I think USC's already in the mix as well, Arkansas. So excited to see those two receivers. Both of them kind of bring different things to the table. Niblett's more of a speed guy that'll blow past you out of the slot. Wilson, on the other hand, will just go over and moss you and outplay you physically. So excited to see that one. And then Friday, heading down to Arlington with Guy to see Aledo and Arlington Seguin. Aledo home to a 2022 four-star safety commit Brian Allen Jr., as well as his little brother Jaden Allen in the 2024 class, who Texas is doing a pretty good job with early on. And then for Seguin, 2023 four-star corner Jamel Johnson, who I think Texas fans should be keeping an eye on. Me and Mike and our Steve Wilfong put in crystal balls for Johnson to Texas recently. We expect a decision here pretty soon. We think Texas is probably the likely pick. And then also playing for Seguin is I believe he's a four-star safety, Xavion Bryce, the Oklahoma commit, who's had a really big last year, had a really big camp circuit, whenever camps opened up in the summer. So excited to see those two guys. It'll probably be a blowout from Aledo's side of things, but I'm curious to see how those defensive backs play.
One day, I got 2 points here. First of all, Aldine Eisenhower, I did not know this, but Coach Goodwin is their recruiting coordinator, and I know him because he used to be at Conroe Oak Ridge when Joseph Asai and Tyler Johnson came through there. One of the better recruiting coordinators in the state of Texas. Awesome. So shout out him. He reached out to me a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were at Ike this year." So if you see him, say hi to him. Oh man, I had another point in my head and it totally just disappeared. What was the second game? Oh, Xavier and Bryce. This is what brought it up. One day, just to boost my ego, we're going to sit here and talk about that Future Focus article I wrote last year about 15 guys in the 22 class who didn't have any offers or had like less than 3 and would become household names. Because if you go through that thing, and Xavier and Bryce was on that list, and Jay Fair and Kip Lewis, and it's probably some of my finest work. So,
I remember that article. Yeah,
I wrote it at Small School State. I was
about to say, I think we were sitting next to each other. Yep.
So it's turned out, if you look at it, I mean, big time dudes have come out of that group. So I'm gonna try to replicate that this year and write another one for 23. So we'll see how that works out. All right, Guy, hit us.
Yeah, quick question. I didn't want to interrupt you earlier. What's Lovejoy like in the trenches? Are they big? Are they more comparable to like my Scots? Like what do they look like there?
They're not huge, but they're I had a high school coach tell me they would much rather face a bunch of 350-pound dudes up front than like a bunch of 260-pound dudes who play with like a good motor. Yeah, and that's kind of Lovejoy. Is they're kind of in that second group. So they can kind of do what they want. They've got obviously, and they've got the playmakers on offense, right? They get the ball to Jackson Lavender, who just committed to SMU, in space, and he can roll with it, or they get it to Kyle Parker, or Noah Nadeau at running back, or Parker Livingston. I mean, they've got guys everywhere. And then on defense, again, there's nothing super impressive up front, but they just get after you. And then at the linebacker position, they've got a couple guys that can absolutely go. Peyton Pierce is one, and I think it's Justin Mater is the other. And then they've got some interesting dudes in the secondary as well. So I think they're just really complete. Okay,
so I kind of started my week early. yesterday I went out to South Oak Cliff and checked out their practice as they get ready for Kimball this week. Big rivalry game in DISD territory. So shouts to Coach Ward, Coach Traylor, Coach Spencer, all those guys for having me out and making me feel right at home. They look ready to go, and I think that should be a fun one for them on Friday. But then Thursday night, I start my game schedule by going on the road again, actually, with our good friend Zach Collins, who coaches over at Mesquite and trains offensive linemen here in the area. His cousin, Karomo Collins, is at Plainview this year. So I'm going to go watch Plainview take on Wichita Falls up in Wichita Falls at Memorial Stadium. So new stadium for me, and actually two teams I've never seen before.
A great stadium. I think
I've heard a lot of fun things. It's an older stadium, right?
It's very old, but it's like it's almost looks like I would say it almost looks like a college stadium. It is a college stadium,
Midwestern
because Midwestern plays there. Yeah. But it's a cool stadium. It's don't expect a nice press box or anything, but if you're into classic looking stadiums, you'll like it.
So it's straight up my alley then. Very cool. Okay, well, yeah. So Karomo Collins has been putting on a show out in the 806 this year. His Plainview Bulldogs, the record doesn't show, but he's kind of been their one bright spot. So I told Zach I'd go check him out at some point. So we're going to hop in the car and go do that together. And then Friday night, Nick already mentioned it, I'll be with him over in East Arlington at the great C.H. Wileman Stadium over there on the Houston.
Have you guys double checked that?
I think it's at Wileman.
I was told a couple weeks ago by an Arlington coach that Wileman is closed for construction, and all games that were scheduled for Wileman are moving over to the Globe.
Ooh. Hold on. I'm going to check. Keep talking, guy.
Really?
Yeah, that's why. I was told by Coach Sam at Bowie that the rest of their home games would be played at Choctaw or the Globe or whatever. Because
but they did. They have played some games. You saw a game there this year, right?
I have not, but they have played some games there. But I believe, at the halfway mark of the year, they started and said we're going to start construction because they're remodeling all the Arlington stadiums. So I would double check that and make sure it's not the Globe. Nick looks like he has something.
According to the official Alito ISD Twitter, they are playing at Wileman.
Okay, all right.
So I don't know. Interesting.
I was kind of looking forward to a night at Choctaw once.
Yeah, me too.
I love Wileman, as I said, the great Wileman Stadium, or Wileman Field, I guess officially. But I'd much rather have a night at Choctaw. Not gonna lie. So, gonna go check that out. Nick kind of covered all the bases there, but I am breaking a rule though with this game. I have always said I will never see Alito play a regular season game. I don't like dealing with the circus that comes with that. They usually beat the dog out of everybody they play in the regular season. And I just like to kind of save them for the playoff run. So I'm going to break that this week, but there's good content to be had at this game. And heck, I've got family that lives in Alito, so why not go support the Bearcats and watch them and check out Seguin as well. So.
You were invited to go to the Battle of the Axe with me.
I know. I felt torn there. So one of our other friends, EJ Holland, will be in town as well. And he asked me to go to a game with him. You asked me to go to that game. And I said, you know what, why don't I just go to a neutral game so I don't break anyone's heart here? So that's why I did what I did. So I'm a good friend at the end of the day,
So you came to a game with me. Appreciate it.
I guess.
But here's the thing. Nick and I were just talking about this.
Yes, I know where I stand in the pecking order.
No. Nick and I were talking about this last night, or at some point. He made a good point. He said, Michael will be coming back our way post-game that night. Maybe he could stop and get a bite to eat with us on our typical Friday routine. I said, why not? So there's your official invite. I don't know if you want to do that. You'll probably hit us with, no, I need to get home and get in bed. But, I thought I'd throw it out there.
No, that might be on the table. I think the last couple of times y'all invited me, I've had somewhere to be Saturday morning, and I don't have anywhere to be Saturday morning. So, all right. We've already talked about Friday night, Battle of the Axe, Marcus and Louisville. Thursday night, I will be going to Garland ISD. My first stop at Homer B. Johnson Stadium.
Fantastic venue.
And going to see Naaman Forest and Lakeview Centennial. Naaman Forest, of course, home to Marcus Steele. And then Lakeview Centennial has a couple guys that I really like as well, including Trey Wilson, their edge rusher in 23, who I think could be a guy for Texas down the line. So should be a fun time. Anything to add before we get out of here, fellas?
Yeah,
Man,
Saturday I'll be in Waco. I forgot to mention that. Big game for me. Baylor Fraz. You know, I'm a Texas man at heart, but with a Baylor degree. So you can expect to see me wearing orange on Saturday. I guess I'll throw that out there.
Okay.
I am watching, kind of perusing the Twitter timeline right now, and watching this tornado that ripped through Orange about an hour and a half ago. It's pretty wicked. Hope everyone down in Southeast Texas is doing all right. It looks pretty crazy.
Yeah, it looks like we're getting into big weather season, so everybody stay safe out there. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We appreciate Guy for joining us as always. We appreciate the listeners for interacting. We are going to get to that mailbag. I couldn't do it today because we decided last minute to record early and I couldn't get the questions out, but maybe next week, who knows. For Nick Harris, Guy Frazier, I'm Mike Roach, and thank you to Taylor Estes for always producing this and making us look good. We will see you guys next week.